Project IGI is noted for its jank-tastic AI, terrific sound design, and ladders? Little known outside of Europe, this is one of the pioneers of the open-world tactical shooter genre, whose developers stumbled into the right balance of jank to challenge, making it frustrating yet endearing as opposed to pull your hair out annoying. Project IGI, or Project Iggy as I call it, is one of those semi-obscure titles of the 2000s that left an indelible memory for those of us who experienced it at release. While I know the game might look blocky and the environment rather sparse by today's standards, its 3D graphics were pretty cutting edge at its December 2000 release date. Although I do have to say, I personally enjoy the minimalist visual atmosphere the game has from a modern perspective as well. The enemies don't feature a lot of variety, all of them being soldiers and such. Surprisingly enough, their death animations do, oftentimes depending on the type of weapon you use to take them down, as well as where you shoot them. Hitting them cleanly in the head will drop them in one hit, but aiming for center mass will mean they'll need some more shots to go down, and in some cases they'll even get up and continue shooting at you. All in all, the death animations are one component of the game the developers did not skimp on, and possibly the best reactions are when you blow them away with the spaz or jackhammer. Now, a mention about the gameplay footage you'll see in this video. I'm pretty sure I could have gotten the game to look better. I have seen footage of the game looking a bit smoother and brighter, but my main interest was to get it to run as it should on my current day system with as little hassle as possible, not to get it to look the best it could. And as far as functionality is concerned, I was more than satisfied with what I managed to get. I'll detail how to get it running on Windows 10 later in the video, but if you want to see that right now, there's a timestamp in the description. We do need to talk about the engine overall, because despite what we do during the game, we can see it truly shine during the cinematics. These show up before each mission and sometimes at the end, giving you the narrative frame for each mission's objectives. And while their dialogue isn't the best example of storytelling in a game I've ever seen, their visuals are anything but. There's portions where we see airplanes and helicopters take off and fly, stuff blowing up, and all of these being shot from really movie style angles, truly revealing how much more grander this game could have been. In fact, I wonder if I can edit all the cutscenes together and make like a short movie out of it. However, in case you skip the cinematics, either because you want to or because of some other considerations, like not all of them playing due to incompatibility issues, you will still find your objectives clearly written down and marked in your portable computer interface. Most mission maps are pretty open in nature, with only a few missions being on a timer and a couple taking place in buildings. This means that successfully completing them is usually down to you finding the quickest way of going through them. Mind you, this trial and error approach applies to all of the maps, but thankfully, when it comes to the non-timed missions, there are usually several ways of achieving a mission's objectives. These depending on how much time you want to spend walking between various points, since again the maps will generally allow you to climb the surrounding hills and mountains. Important to note how the further you get into the game, the less healing you'll find, which will mean that your memorization skills will be put to the test when dealing with a particularly challenging assignment. Your patience will be put to the test as well, especially during that last mission, but more on that later. While there's not a lot of interaction with the game's environment for reasons of tech limitations of the time, there are a few things you can do. One is you can shoot computers and they explode, which isn't super relevant to the proceedings but cool nonetheless. You can also break windows and all bullets leave holes in whatever material they're shot at. Likewise, blood splatter shows up a fair bit. Not something I remembered or was expecting really, but very nice to have. In terms of realism, there's also a ton of fall damage, and there's blowback and potentially self-inflicted damage from grenades. Sound design is absolutely spectacular, especially for the era. Footsteps will sound different depending on the ground's texture, and in the snow maps there are actually two different types of snow texture, and they do sound differently when you step on them. What really threw me for a bit of a loop was how real the rain on a tin roof sounded like. There is no tutorial in the game. Instead, the campaign features progressively more difficult missions which introduce different weapons. Seems like this was another thing they saved some costs on, besides the AI, which I'll talk about in a bit. it's a good idea to look into the key configurations and see what the control scheme has to offer. And once you do that, you'll notice that Project IGI uses the arrow keys for direction by default, which is just precious and quaint. This is a pre-WASD game, bre. I obviously had to remap the keys to the now traditional WASD, as well as the activate key to something more manageable for me like the E key, since that's what I'm most used to. The game is hardcore in the sense of it not offering any sort of save game feature. Yet another thing the developers seem to have decided to jettison in order to cut some costs, I think. This lack of mid-mission saving does make the game more challenging, since it means you have to restart the mission from the beginning if you die. But at the same time, I also have to ask myself whether or not they did this because they knew how jank the AI is. This was the year 2000, and while 3D graphics in PC gaming had been around for several years, the Project Iggy feature that really blew our minds was none other than
ladders.
Not the ladders themselves, but you being able to rotate the camera around while your character was using the ladders was so cutting edge back then, at least as far as most of us were concerned, that this is still one of the main things that people will remember when it comes to this title. But what mostly characterizes this title on the negative side of things is the absolutely jank-tastic AI. Your enemies are a series of not super descript soldier dudes in varying types of uniform, that's true, wielding different types of weapons depending on the mission. But what they lack in polygons, they also lack in self-preservation or aim, because their behavior is odd to say the least. There are basically two modes the enemies are in. I call them default and alert mode. When in default mode, they see to their patrolling routes or stationary positions, waiting for something to come within their interaction range, which one would assume is at the very least line of sight, if not some sort of hearing range, and that much is true. Once the enemies see you, they will start either running somewhat toward you and start shooting, or run seemingly into a completely different direction. I say somewhat toward you because their pathing is weird and quite possibly predetermined based on who knows what algorithms, because they will oftentimes not run straight to you, instead choosing to run towards a button where they can set off the alarm. But you see, the thing is, you can see them, and more importantly, shoot at them long before they can see you, which means you can pick off many of them from a distance even without a sniper rifle. In fact, I'm pretty sure many missions rely on this fact for you to successfully finish them, and that is not great for the AI, but could have been forgiven if the other enemies would react to you shooting a dude dead while within what you'd assume would be their sight or hearing range. As such, you can kill dudes that are spaced even something like 10 meters apart, and they won't really give a shit, as long as it's with a sniper or maybe the MP5, both of which seem to be suppressed although they don't look like it. So that would be default mode. Alert mode happens when you do something that triggers the alarms in a facility. An active alarm will mean that everyone is running around like maniacs, super ready to shoot, and also that extra enemies are spawned, more or less continuously depending on the spawn point. So there are missions where you can never kill them all, unless you shut down the alarm. That's an important thing to know. As I mentioned earlier, an enemy's first reaction to seeing you will most likely be running towards the nearest alarm button and or shooting at you. These buttons are situated around the map and can sometimes be used without you even being in their vicinity, but something triggered the AI to use it. Anyway, the good thing is that once you find the button, you can push it to shut down the alarm. The other thing that can trigger an alarm are the surveillance cameras. Now here's the thing about the surveillance cameras. They also have a fairly limited range of sight and can be destroyed from afar, which is advisable to do. However, they will not trigger the alarm instantly on seeing you anyway. They will start beeping for a bit and usually give you enough time to hide around the corner or go inside the building, from where you can hopefully turn them off by using your super secret agent hacking skills. But you can inadvertently trigger the alarm if you shoot a camera that is on the patrol path of an enemy soldier. When the soldier sees the shutout camera, he'll go start the alarm. And this goes both ways, because if you shoot a soldier within the sight of an active camera, then that will also trigger the alarm almost immediately. So you have to plan what you shoot, in which order and where fairly carefully in order to maximize discretion. Then there is the problem with the enemies not really making a lot of sound, or as I speculate, sometimes the game spawns them closer to you than you'd think, because many times, many times, I was scared by the presence of an enemy behind me or to my side I had not seen or heard. Although that could just be how the fog of war works, so maybe this is a point toward the game's realism, I'm still not sure. I know for certain the game spawned some motherfuckers in a room while I was in said room, so there's that. However, giving credit where credit is due, what the AI does have is consistency. You can rely on it behaving in the same janktacular way every time, and as such, it's kinda like a bug that becomes much more than simply exploitable, it becomes a feature. This is simply how the game works. Dare I say, if it were to function as you'd expect it should, the game would be close to impossible to finish. Project Iggy does try to impart a certain amount of audio realism to its weapons, even if it doesn't succeed in doing so in other respects. They look good enough, relative to the capability of the time. They also have varying degrees of recoil, so that's great. What's less great is how some weapons seem to have hit scan, meaning there is no bullet drop off, and this means you can sometimes use even something recoil heavy like the AK-47 to semi-snipe enemies from afar as long as you only shoot one bullet. The weapons do seem to have an effective range though. You can't use the Glock to shoot enemies from the same range as you would with the various other submachine guns or rifles, so there's that. Sometimes enemies will shoot through walls. I initially didn't know if this was a bug or a feature, and honestly, considering this game, it could be either. However, once we look at the back of the physical box, it says here, real world physics and interactive environments. Bullets rip through wooden floors but ricochet off metal staircases. So it is an actual feature. Good on you, devs. While you can rely on the AI to be its janktacular self regardless of the situation, what you cannot rely on is how well it will shoot at any one time, because the weapon spread is also, well, random. Sometimes several soldiers can be shooting at you and mostly miss, while some other times only one enemy will shoot and take half or more your HP. And the same applies to you. Now granted, the weapons they use can also matter. You'll be easier to hit with the spaz than with an AK, but even the AK wielders will take you down if they roll lucky enough. And that's one of the main reasons that you'll die in extra long missions, like the last one. I can't tell you how many times I failed this mission. I can easily tell you it was tens of times, and finishing it took many hours spread out over even more days and actually weeks, because even once I had memorized the layout of the map and optimized my getting through it, the bullet spread would take me out during the final third of the mission, where it gets more shootier. The amount of deaths you're seeing in this montage aren't even a quarter of the amount of times I died trying to finish it. Another thing I need to mention because of its importance to the gameplay experience is your binoculars. Using your binoculars will not only allow you to zoom in on installations from a distance, but they'll also highlight enemies whether they're moving or not. The binoculars are basically predator vision, so you should be using them more than you think you need to. So how about getting Project IGI to run on Windows 10? What I did was use a thing called DigiVoodoo 2, a piece of software that can help in some situations with running older games on modern Windows machines. You download it and extract the archive. Once that's done, go into the MS folder, then x86. Here you copy all the DLL files and paste them straight into your game's install directory. You should also copy and paste the DigiVoodoo CPL executable into the install directory as well, because this will allow you to force some visual settings onto the game in case the game's being a dick and crashing whenever you click on the graphic settings, like it does for me. I link DigiVoodoo 2 in the description. I remember seeing and playing Project IGI in the winter of 2000, when visiting friends with computers who could run it. Back then I had a lowly 586DX4 and modern gaming would still be out of my reach for 4 more years. What made Project IGI special was that absolutely all of my various friends and acquaintances were playing it. Regardless of their general gaming preferences, Project Iggy was what I can only describe as a crossover hit, at least in my limited neck of the woods. And as such, since I played it during the winter and the game also happens to feature a few snow stages, it is one of the titles I associate with the winter holidays, alongside the likes of Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and the often overlooked Nox. And I really truly enjoyed playing it during this past December and January. Despite the game not really making it in the Americas, it must have sold pretty well in Europe, because it did get a sequel 3 years later, but that one really came and went under the radar. But as of making this video, a prequel called IGI Origins has been in development since 2019 and is scheduled for release sometimes in 2023. There's a pretty cool gameplay trailer out there, which I gotta say doesn't look bad at all, but as you should always treat all such trailers, don't believe anything until you see it running on your machine. There's a link on the screen to a video you might wanna check out after this one. I've been Steven Ansens, I have a Patreon, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video.